With this film we start the topic of lighting. This time I will introduce you to all the light sources of Redshift, and I will show you the basic functions and how we can use them. The light sources of Redshift can be found under Create, then directly under Light, or also here under Redshift under Lights, and also up here under Objects we can find two more different light sources. Also in the bar we find the lights, once these two and the rest of the other lights. For lighting I use the file with the name Living Room 01, which comes directly from the asset browser. I turned off the lights contained in it. In the Object Manager I added all the lights from Redshift. First I show you what is available and what you can do with it. Of course we'll go into more detail during the course, so you get a rough overview first. We start with a point light, and this is a simple point light emitting light from a single point and illuminating the scene 360 degrees. We can see that we can use this quite well in lamps, and this light is good for drawing attention to certain areas. And of course this also works with the other light sources. Let's go to the next light. Here we have the spotlight, with the difference that it shines in a certain direction. From the look of it, the lighting looks like a flashlight. This is also a good way to set desired accents. We can also use the spotlight for projections. That means we can use textures or alpha channels of trees or other plants and project them onto geometry. We can use this to make our image look more exciting by simulating shadows. Let's look at the next light, the infinite light. This is an infinite light source where the position does not matter. We only have to pay attention to the direction of the light, and thus we can simulate as sunlight. The sunlight comes from an infinitely large space. For this reason it does not matter at all if this light is placed directly in this space. I can also position the light outside here. As I said, it comes from an infinitely distant point, whereby we have to pay attention only to the angle. Of course, we still have a few adjustment possibilities here. Let's go to the next light. This is the Aerylight. This can be compared to a softbox from a photographer. With this we can very realistically illuminate individual objects or rooms. The light is generally used very often, and I would say that I use this light 90% of the time. Let's go to the next light. This is the dome light. This is an ambient light that is also in an infinite space. This is a texture that wraps 360 degrees around our space. This light is also very commonly used for photorealistic renderings. We get the best results with this, with HDR textures that includes multiple exposure levels. The higher the resolution and the more exposure levels such an HDR has, the better quality we achieve. At lower resolution, of course, the reflection looks correspondingly worse in geometry. I will go to the light and turn that off. Let's look at the IES light. This light needs a file describing the light source. This file contains a light profile from a real physical light which comes from a lamp manufacturer. I will go a little closer. Here you can see the light profile from this lamp. We can also see this in the rendering. We load the load profile directly into the IES light, and that is under the IES profile sections. We can also find such files in the asset browser. Just type IES or go to the website of the lamp manufacturers. There you can mostly download and use these profiles for free. And you can use these lights especially well for architectural visualizations and interior rendering. We simulate real light sources with this. Let's go to the next light, Portalights. These are not actually intended to be used directly for illumination, but they are just to support the dome light. I am activating the dome light. We see how this light now surrounds our complete scene, and you can imagine that it is not easy for Redshift to calculate the light of the dome light in such a way that enough light is sent through the small window to get a good result. The light must go through these small windows. When we use Portalights, we support this process. These lights just need to be placed at the windows of the geometry, so that Redshift can see right away where he has to send the single light beams of the dome light. With this, we get a better quality, faster and safe render time. We'll take a closer look at this later. Again, we'll turn that off. Let's go to the next light, the physical sunlight. This light is very similar to the infinite light. The difference is that the chromaticity is set parametrically in the light. And again, as with infinite light, the position of the light is unimportant. Let me show this with the chromaticity. I will turn the light in another direction, for example here, so that the light comes from this side. The colors change automatically, so we can simulate a sun rays or a sunset. Colors change automatically, which is optimal for architectural rendering. I turn the light more to the vertical position. Now we have the midday sun and the colors change simultaneously. But here are some more settings, more about this later. So let's move on. Then we have Redshift Sky here. This object causes us to get a parametric horizon. We can already see a slight blue light here as well. Now I'm not using that alone as a light source, even though it contributes to it. This object simply creates a horizon which is already created parametrically. I'm going to leave the camera perspective so we can see this for a moment as well. And in the background, we now no longer see the black color, but again, a parametrically generated bluish gradient. And I will turn the camera a bit further below the building. Now we can see the sun. In the sky object, we go directly to the tab sun. And we can change its position using the sun direction. The position of the sun is a bit awkward here. We can also drag in a normal physical sunlight directly up here in this slot. So the light direction can be determined in combination with this light. This makes things much easier. We can also build the whole thing ourselves by just pulling this in here. So we will use the physical sunlight for lighting. I will rotate the light a bit in the scene. I should probably activate the light. Let's go back to the interior view of our room. And now if I change the rotation of the physical sunlight, we can see in the background that everything adjusts automatically. The colorfulness of the light and also the progression of the horizon. I turn the light again to simulate a sunset. Here we can see the horizon again, how everything adjusts. Here we can simulate very realistic sunrises or sunsets. What we have just created is also available ready to use. We don't have to build that by hand by dragging the physical sunlight in here. We can also create the whole thing directly here using a sun and sky rig object. We will go up here to Redshift, to lights, to objects. Here we find the sun and sky rig. Here is our completed setup, so we don't have to place the physical sun object under sun in the sky object. We got that automatically created with one click. Now we have an overview of the lights. If handled correctly, we can get very realistic results.